Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, and welcome to our virtual program today, the Workday Financials Customer Spotlight Lunch. Here at Workday, the health and safety of our community is top priority for us, and we realize that this is a tough climate we're all currently in. So we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to still join us. My name is Christine Lake, and I manage the marketing for the Southeast region here at Workday. I'll be your host for today, but presenting the information you came here for will be Dan Flynn, Principal Solution Consultant focused on financials. Michael Moore, Regional Sales Director, will moderate our customer spotlight and fireside chat with Mark Green, Controller for Matrix Resources. In terms of the flow for the next hour and a half, right after I'm done talking, Dan will take over and give you a live Workday Financials demo. And during that, Bill will be answering your questions regarding it. At about 12:45, we'll switch over to Michael and Mark for the customer spotlight. And then at the end, we will open it up for Q&A for Mark. And we will wrap this up by 1:30. Before we get started, let's go over a quick housekeeping items. As you heard at the beginning of this, we are recording this session for future marketing resources. In terms of lunch, you should have received your e-gift card to Panera last night. Maybe you used it today, and if you don't feel comfortable going out at the moment, hopefully you can use it sometime later. If you did not receive it, please reach out to me by sending me an email, or you can send me a note in the chat function, and I'll make sure you are taken care of. As you can also all see, you are on mute throughout the presentation right now. In terms of questions, during the demo, we ask that you use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. So if you scroll at the bottom of your Zoom, you'll see a chat bubble. You'll click that, and we ask that your questions during the demo go there, and we will have Bill, one of our solution consultants, answering you live during the demo. And then questions for Mark during the fireside chat, we ask that you hold those during until the end, and then at the end what we'll do is we will actually open it up and you'll be able to unmute yourself to ask questions. Okay, now I will pass it off to Dan for our Workday Financials demo.
All right, thank you, Christine. Can you just confirm you're able to see my screen? We should be looking at the Workday homepage.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So again, my name is Dan Flynn. I'm a financial solution consultant here with Workday. Been with Workday going on 5 years now, and prior to that, spent about 10 years in financial systems implementations. I'm going to be walking you through Workday Financials today over the next 30 to 40 minutes, giving you a high-level overview into some of the key concepts that are pervasive across the entire application. So we're going to look at things like financial reporting, dashboards, consolidations. We're going to talk about how Workday automates and controls the flow of transactions, regardless of where they originate from across the application, and subledger activity as well. And then we're going to spend some time talking about audit and compliance and how Workday can help you from an audit and compliance perspective within the financial area of the application, but we're also going to look at how this extends out to the overall business. So what are some of the benefits of having an application where financials and human capital management were built and live together? Now, the majority of our presentation today is going to be from the focus of our corporate controller. So if we were to look in the top right corner and click on Teresa's icon here, we could see that her role within the organization is the controller. This is her employee profile. So we can see that as an employee, she has a number of self-service capabilities right from this menu where she can see everything from compensation, pay, time off. So she can manage her day-to-day employee activities, but as a controller, she also is a people leader. So she has managerial responsibilities with the organization. We can very easily come through, we can navigate the org chart, and we can see who her reports are. We can see where she sits within the organization, reporting directly up to the Chief Financial Officer. So later in the presentation, what we'll do is we'll extend outside of the Office of Finance, and we'll look at how Workday is able to distribute financial reporting, planning-related data, alongside human capital management data for operational business leaders, divisional managers, and such. So the majority of this presentation will be focused on Teresa's role as the controller, where she is responsible for all of the financial activity across the organization and the accuracy of all of her financial results. If you're not familiar with Workday, you'll find that the search drives a lot of the navigation. So very intuitive web-based search engine. If she wants to search for an income statement, she can just start to type income. It's going to narrow down a list of results she has access to based on her security. So you will see me use the search function for some navigation, but in most cases, as a user of Workday, you're going to have these icons right here on your home page, and they're going to give you one-click access to any report or process that you have security access to across the entire application. So that is one important point of this, is that the security drives and controls everything that you can see within the application, and that is role-based for Teresa, where she's going to be able to see all of the financial activity and in some cases drill into activity specific to her area of responsibility. Now, if we look at this dashboard where I've just clicked into, as Teresa starts her day, one logical place as the corporate controller is her financial results dashboard, where she's going to be presented with all of her key financial statements. So her income statement, her cash flow statement, balance sheet, and those are going to be supported with analytics that we see over here on the right-hand side as it relates to expenses, revenue, cash management. You can see that she can very easily just navigate through the dashboard, and it's just a series of reports that are relevant to her area of responsibility. And then down below, you'll see that she has the ability to mix in additional reports as well. In this case, if you wanted to look at something like average operating expenses or revenue per head count, very simple to do so. And head count, she can just drill directly into who these people are, where they work within the organization. It's not a statistic that comes over from an HR application. It's just natively something that exists within the Workday application that we can expose in reports, or maybe for other financial purposes, things like allocations that we need to do in the back office. Now, before we drill a little deeper into this dashboard, I'll just talk a little bit about what makes Workday's approach to financial reporting unique in the marketplace. And the key component of that being that the reports and the transactions were built into the application to live together. They can never be disconnected, and there are a number of key benefits of that. Number one is that you're always going to have direct access to drill to the source of the transaction and take action based on your security. But you're also going to be able to drill into all of the surrounding data that is relevant to those transactions as well. So all of the dimensionality that we want to be able to slice and dice our revenue or our expenses by is natively and inherently available by simply clicking on any one of these figures and drilling into the desired information that you want to see. So first of all, as a global consolidated financial statement, one of the things she might want to look at is revenue broken down by company. As we think about financial consolidations, another thing that's unique with Workday's approach to reporting is that we built the consolidation functionality directly into the application as well, which is very different from that traditional approach where you would extract the data out of the general ledger, populate it in a consolidation management tool, and then replicate all of your data elsewhere where it then becomes disconnected from the source transaction. Within Workday, all of the elimination entries, the currency translations, topside adjustments, everything is managed directly within the Workday general ledger, and then the consolidation functions are performed based on rules that we establish directly within the application. Where now she could see global consolidated financials, she can perform analytics here as well, and then she can sort and drill into any one of these individual figures, and we can further analyze the revenue. So in this case, if she wanted to look at simply the US-based revenue and she wanted to break that down by the various lines of business with which we operate. She has the ability to quickly do that, and now we can see a further breakdown of that revenue activity. And because this isn't a cube-based structure, she doesn't have to follow a defined path. She can simply look at whatever information is relevant. If she wants to see data by project or by revenue category, she can do that. If she prefers to look at it by region, okay, she can skip right to the regional dimension and she can drill into that information as well. And then ultimately, she can get all the way down to information like the customer level and beyond the customer level, all the way to the actual source of the transaction, which in this case, on the revenue side, is a customer invoice that we have billed to our customer. So here you can see that we've drilled all the way down through these various dimensions to the source of the transaction, which is an invoice that now lives in accounts receivable. And she can review the details of this invoice. She can see all of the relevant information, including the accounting and the line item detail. But she also has the ability, if she noticed something was off, to potentially reclass and take action based on that security access that she has. Now, with Workday, for any transaction that originates within the application, you can natively drill down to the source of the transaction. But in many cases, for some of you who work in industries where your billing happens in an industry-specific operational billing solution, you might say, well, that transaction is not going to originate in Workday. And for many of our customers, that is the case. In a number of different industries, financial services versus healthcare, all of that billing activity is taking place in industry-specific systems. But that doesn't mean we have to lose the detail. So if you want to bring in data in detail from an operational solution, we have the ability to do that. We can generate the accounting, summarize the entries in our general ledger, but also give you the analytics on that transaction level detail directly through the dashboards as well, so that you don't have to lose all of that rich operational detail or push it off into a separate data warehouse elsewhere. So regardless of your business model, whether you're a professional services organization that runs all of your billing and consulting and revenue recognition directly through Workday, or you are in one of the many industries where you rely on billing from an external system, Workday can provide this additional value in the data. And then as we think more on the expense side, almost all of our customers are going to be able to benefit from drilling into expenses as it relates to maybe payroll data that's coming directly from Workday payroll, or it could be expense management, expense reports that originate within Workday, all the way to procurement and accounts payable. So that's just a very quick introduction into some of the things that our customers love about our reporting and some of the ways that our approach to financial reporting and dashboards is unique. We're going to look at more reports and dashboards as we move on, but that's just a quick introduction into the overall concepts. Where we're going to move next is more into the transactional world of Workday. And we're going to talk about how Workday automates and controls the flow of transactions regardless of where they originate. So we're going to look at what we call the business process framework, which for many of you initially you might think of as workflow, because we are going to be managing a number of approvals and notifications that exist within the application. But what you'll also find is this is going to extend much further beyond your traditional workflow capabilities. Number one, because it was built at the core of the application and it controls every business event that happens within the application. Number two, because it extends beyond just transactional type activities. So if you think about, for example, this very first action that she has within her inbox, it's a period close related step. So you think about a complex process like your period close and all of the different actions that people across the organization are responsible for on a daily basis. The business process can organize all of those activities. It can distribute the various task management activities to the individual users. From an administrative perspective, it gives us the ability to perform analytics on time to close by month, by quarter, on an annual basis. and it helps us identify those bottlenecks and areas for improvement as we continue to progress throughout the year. Now, for our first initial example here, we are going to start with an approval, and this approval is more on the accounts payable side. The purpose of this example, not specifically to talk about AP functionality, but more to give you an overall view of how these transactions flow within the application. For our purposes here, what I've done is I've selected a payables invoice that's also multi-currency. It's going to be a multi-company example so we can show the impact on our consolidated financials. So in this case, if you look at this invoice, you will see that it is for our Canadian legal entity, and you'll notice that the supplier is BMS Market Research, and this is in Canadian dollars. If we were to scroll down and look at this transaction in more detail, we could see the line level detail on the AP invoice. We could drill into the matching detail if it came from procurement. We can also see all of the global tax implications here. As we scroll down further, she has the ability to see the source documentation. So Workday does support the scanning of invoices. We can present the source documentation directly within the workflow. And there's no limitation to the number of source documents that you can store within the application. All of those attachments will live with this record for its entirety. Now, as we scroll down, what we can also see is a process history. So we can see who submitted this invoice, who's approved this invoice. We can see a thread of communication that has taken place, and we can view all of the collaboration that has happened prior to this arriving in Teresa's inbox, so that she has full context of this particular transaction from start to finish before making the decision to approve, send back, deny this particular transaction. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is approve, and we're going to see the impact that this has on the organization. First of all, you'll find that we get a green check mark. Anywhere you see this check mark, that means there are no additional actions required on anyone's behalf to complete the transaction. So from a workflow perspective, that means it's not going to hit anybody else's inbox, but also from an accounting perspective, what we will find is that Workday has now posted this transaction into the general ledger. So one of the things that the business process is responsible for beyond just managing the approval is also automating the accounting into the general ledger and eliminating that traditional non-value added step of having to batch up all of the data at the end of the day, summarize the transactions, and push them down into the general ledger. If all of the transactions have been approved and they have been through your workflow approval process, met all of your internal thresholds and controls, then there really is no additional value in spending that time to batch the data up and try to push it down into the general ledger. And then beyond that, what we'll find is that Workday can now generate the accounting. We've got our expense. We have our VAT receivable in this case for the global invoice. We can also see accounts payable on the balance sheet side. You'll notice that Workday is recording the expense to the appropriate cost center, but we're also seeing a significant amount of detail that is being carried into the general ledger that in many cases you would not expect in more of a traditional environment. So you could see the tax implication on the expenses here. You can see it on the receivable account as well. But if we want to just take a simple example, you think about the supplier. So right here we can see that our expense account is now also hitting the supplier for BMS Market Research. If we were to scroll down, we can see the same thing on the payables. So what this allows us to do is retain additional operational detail from the subledger transaction, bring it into the general ledger, so that if you are looking at an account detail analysis report or you are looking at a financial statement like a balance sheet, you can look at your open payables and you can see it by supplier. You can look at your marketing expense and you can see that by supplier. Where if you were managing this activity in another system, you would likely have to go over to the subledger, run a separate report to find that information. And then you could take that concept and you can carry it through to any type of subledger activity. Payroll data, you'll have the ability to drill back to the employee level information. If we're submitting expense reports, you'll be able to see line item detail within the general ledger, including who submitted the expenses. So a number of advantages to the way that the business process is able to automate the posting as well as enrich the data beyond just a summarized ledger account within your GL. And then ultimately, because all of the reporting and consolidations live within the application, she can immediately go see the impact this has on her consolidated financials. So if I were to search for her consolidated income statement, instead of just going directly to a dashboard, we can search right for the report, or we could access it from her homepage. And she has the ability to run this financial statement and now see it in a different format. The first report we were seeing was actual versus budget, presenting a variance analysis where we could drill into all of that related detail. In this case, we're looking at an income statement broken down by the various legal entities, including all of our elimination entries that are happening for consolidation purposes. So with that said, what we can do now is drill into any one of these columns. In this case, I'm going to go to our Global Modern Services Canada entity, and we can scroll and we can drill by any one of these additional dimensions, including the supplier. So now if we look at marketing expense by supplier and we drill into BMS market research, we have the ability to look at our source documentation, and we have the option to drill down to that source transaction that we posted just a matter of seconds ago. So think about what that would take in a traditional environment where we have to transact in the subledger, manually post into the general ledger, and then extract out of the application to put it in a CPM tool that might run on a nightly basis, for example. A lot of work to get all the way down to the consolidated level. And then at that point, it's very unlikely that you would have the ability to drill into the source of the transaction, and you absolutely would not have the ability to take action on those transactions. Beyond just having those capabilities, what Workday also does is it allows you to navigate the transaction beyond just what that invoice was. We can now see all of the related activity. So the AP invoice, we know, created a journal entry in the GL. But what we can also see is that the invoice originated from a purchase order. If we were to scroll down and navigate through this diagram, what we could see is the purchase order originated as the result of a requisition. And we can drill into the requisition, we can see who submitted that requisition and all of the surrounding details. So if we were to go into a deeper technology discussion as far as how Workday is architected, one of the things you would hear is that we're built on an object-oriented technology. And for most of us people in the Office of Finance, that probably doesn't mean a whole lot. But to me, this is where this all starts to come together, because what it means is that Workday is inherently tracking the relationships of all of these different records that live within the application. And these links can't be broken, which is one of the reasons that reconciliation is so much easier within Workday. It's impossible to break the link between this invoice and this journal entry. So assuming we set up the application with the appropriate controls, there's never going to be a discrepancy between our GL balance and our subledger. If there is, there's simply going to be a column where we can drill into the variance, and we have the ability to see any of the manual transactions that might have been entered to that account. So now we've seen a little bit of the reporting and the dashboards, the analytics. We've seen a transaction become approved, posted, and then manifest itself in a consolidated financial statement where we can then get a full 360-degree view of that transaction. What I'm going to do now is take one step back and show you a little bit about how this actually happens within the application. I mentioned the business process framework earlier, and what I'm going to do is actually take you in here and show you what I mean by the fact that every business event within the application is controlled by this business process. You'll see here out of the box, we have hundreds of them that exist across human capital management as well as financial management. Beyond just the fact that we have these business processes, the most important part is that we deliver business processes as part of our deployment best practices based on what we've seen implemented and successfully deployed in the marketplace. So for every type of transaction with Workday, out of the box, you'll receive a default definition that you can start using on day one. And we have the ability to tweak those and create as many alternate definitions as you need for the various areas of your organization that might differ from what's delivered. But ultimately, that's the reason that Workday customers are able to go live so quickly and efficiently and start realizing value early on in their deployment. Now, if we want to take a look at the transaction that we just posted, what I can do is search for supplier invoice. And if you want to get an idea of what type of processes Workday delivers out of the box, we can look at an AP supplier invoice event business process. And the first thing you'll see is that Workday self-documents all of these flows so that you don't have to spend additional time trying to create these diagrams and visualize how your workflows exist across the application. Right away, what you can see is that upon initiation, the first thing that Workday is going to look to see is that, did this come from procurement? If it did, then Workday is going to initiate the supplier accounts matching process, where it's going to look through delivered matching logic that comes within the application. If it's a match, it'll send the invoice on. If it's not, then it will be rerouted for review. As we scroll down, you'll see that there are a number of additional steps that may or may not be applicable to this overall process. If it came from a recurring supplier invoice, like a lease agreement or something along those lines, it might have different treatment than if it was just a standard non-PO invoice, where it's going to go directly to the cost center manager. For most of the customers we work with, at some level, they manage project-related activity, capital projects being a good example. You'll see that if it's a project-related transaction, that might facilitate a different workflow. And then as we think about things like capitalization treatment, what you'll find is that if we scroll down, what Workday is also doing is it's looking at specific attributes on that transaction, and it's looking back into the rules that we've established within the application to determine if it's potentially something that we want to capitalize and we want to create an asset that's going to depreciate moving forward. So without anyone in accounts payable having to know the accounting treatment on an AP invoice, what Workday is able to do is look at the attributes of that invoice and route it to somebody in accounting who's responsible for managing the asset management side of the business, and review and say, yes, we want to capitalize this, initiate the registration process, or no, we want to expense this. All of that is rules driven, but then reviewed through the business process, and we don't have to worry about someone in accounts payable whose job isn't really to know the accounting treatment. They don't have to alter their overall transactional process in any way. So you could see the self-documenting flows that come within the application, but beyond that, what you can also see is the business process definition itself. And the reason that I show you this is that it's designed for the business user community. We want you to be able to change these processes if you need. If you determine that upon implementation, you've got too many steps or you need some additional steps in certain areas, that's not something that you need to call Workday for. It's not necessarily something you need to call IT for either. What you'll find is that this is all in plain English, and with the appropriate security access, you would have the ability to come in and modify these rules by yourself to then help them better meet the needs of the organization. So you can see here there's no coding whatsoever. In this case, just plain English. If the supplier invoice is greater than or equal to $10,000 USD, then it's going to require approval by the controller, which in our case is the step that triggered approval to Teresa's inbox, which initiated this whole scenario that we saw just a moment ago. So you can very easily understand these. You can very easily change them as needed. And then beyond that, what Workday does is provides a full audit trail of everything associated with this business process. So if your auditors ever come in and say, we need to see all of the controls you have in place to protect the business as it relates to AP invoicing, invoice processing, what you'll see is that Workday can just deliver a document to you here that's going to allow you to present all of that information in a very simple way. So right there, we just download a control report and we have a 38-page report to show all of our AP invoice processes and controls. And you can simply scroll through these, you can print it out, you can save it to your PC. So from an audit perspective, all of the changes that you make to a business process are effective dated. You have the ability to see what controls you had in place last January versus later in the year when you had made some updates. We are going to show you all of the controls you have for the business process, but also once the transactions start flowing through the application, we saw the audit trail specifically for that transaction. So at the transaction level, we can see who initiated those, who's approved them. And then we go one layer deeper where we audit every single change that is made to any record within the application. So another thing that's unique to Workday from an audit perspective, it's always on across the entire application, date and time stamped, who made the change, what was the change that was made to an AP invoice, to a journal entry, to an expense report, whatever it might be. And then at a more holistic level, what Workday does is it provides audit capabilities across the entire application. So if you think about traditional governance, risk, and compliance solutions that were designed to sit on top of HR and financial systems to govern for, or to look at the application for segregation of duties violations, to look across the application to mitigate risk for fraud, waste, and abuse within the organization. All of that natively exists within the Workday application. We can see expense report line exceptions. We can see, again, expenses without receipts. We can see banking and cash-related data. And as we scroll down further, we can see supplier invoice or payroll control reports, for example, where in this case, we can see that Teresa has segregation of duties violations where she has the ability to create a supplier. She also has the ability to invoice and pay a supplier as well. Now, in many cases, for our customers, they don't have the bandwidth to have all of the segregation of duties in place that they should to protect the organization. So what Workday does is we allow you to implement what we would call compensating controls to say that we know we are at risk in a certain area. Teresa has this violation, but since we can't prevent it because we don't have the bandwidth, what we can do is we can mitigate the risk by showing when the violations have been exercised, send notifications when they have been exercised over a certain amount or threshold, so that we can still keep tabs on any of these changes where we are at risk across the organization. So all of this is delivered, again, broken down by the various roles, segregation of duties, risk indicators, and notifications across the organization. And then from an audit perspective, Workday was designed and built post Sarbanes-Oxley, so it was built with all of these controls in place. But we also give you all of your traditional audit, reporting, and type query capability where you can query and sample transactions all the way down to the most detailed level, even thinking back to that AP invoice that we just processed a moment ago. If we wanted to validate the translation rules and see the rule set that was used to create the translation and the rate that was used, all of that is accessible right here through these audit and query reports. So just a matter of a few moments from a financial perspective, now we've seen consolidated financial dashboards. We've seen the flow of the transaction from a workflow perspective down into the GL. And then we took you a little bit behind the scenes, looked under the covers to show you what really powers all of that, and then how we provide you accountability to know that Workday is actually performing the functions that it's supposed to, and we're doing it in a controlled manner. Now, the last thing we're going to do as part of this presentation is we're going to leave our persona as the corporate controller, and we are going to sign in as a different user within the organization, so you can get a feel for how Workday extends out to the entire organization. For someone who doesn't necessarily work in human capital management, they don't work in finance, but they do need to access information related to themselves as an employee, related to potentially people that are on their team from a management perspective, but also people who have P&L responsibilities. They have to manage their department level budgets, and they need to be able to see where they live from an actual versus budget perspective. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is take a look at this from Jake Lee's perspective, and you can see that he's a VP of Sales and Marketing. And as Jake starts his day, one place that he might choose to go is, as opposed to looking at a report and drilling into the report, he just might want his key performance indicators. He might want that information presented directly to him in the form of a scorecard, where he doesn't need to go and look at all the individual expenses or all the individual employee level data. He just wants to see who are my customers, are they happy from a sales execution perspective, average deal size, discount rates, but then potentially bringing in additional information as well. So for those of you that use a CRM, that would be a simple example of where we can bring in additional data related to opportunities and help better understand the pipeline, and then create calculations for these metrics and these key performance indicators. So scorecards are a great way, especially at more of an executive level, to get visibility into the overall health of your area of responsibility, whether it be finance, HR, or in this case, a sales manager that needs to blend all of that and see it in one single place, along with some of that operational third-party data. So beyond the scorecard, what we'll do for Jake is also deliver him more detailed reports where he can get visibility into the overall health of his business, broken down by the business units that he's responsible for managing. So what you'll find here on this dashboard is that Jake is responsible for 3 different divisions: technology, other services, and then CPG. And as we look at this dashboard, you'll see that it is a blend of his financial responsibilities across the organization, alongside his workforce costs and the people that report up to him in these various divisions. So he can see his P&L, he can see workforce division cost, he has a real-time headcount that he can drill into, and he can see who the people are broken down by these various divisions. He can see his customer-related data directly from here. How much have we invoiced? What's the average deal size? And then he can see how the various areas of the organization are performing from a revenue perspective. So all of this now can be blended together to give him that holistic view of his area of responsibility, where from a financial perspective, even as a business leader, he can come through and he can evaluate his actual versus budget, and he can drill into variance, and he can see that information by revenue category, for example, and he can see what's contributing to a positive versus negative variance across the organization. And he's able to do that because Workday provides one source of the data across your HR functions, your financial data, but also the planning data as well. So remember that the budget originates within Workday. The budget is also a live figure here within the application where we can drill down to those variances and we can truly understand what's contributing to these trends within the organization. So with that said, I'm going to wrap the demonstration portion of this meeting and just kind of leave you with this, where you can see that as a single user, we're now able to show you how Workday can plan for the organization from a budget perspective. We can execute all of the transactions from Jake's business process, where he's going to be able to manage his employee level transactions, but also his approvals and his budget responsibilities. And then finally, he can analyze all of this data across his areas of responsibility through this use of this particular dashboard. And with that said, I'm going to stop the sharing here and I'm going to turn it back to you, Christine.
Thanks, Dan. Okay. Well, you can continue to ask your questions in the chat box to Bill, and he will continue to answer those. But I'm going to go ahead and kick off our customer spotlight portion of the webinar. So I'd like to introduce Michael Moore, Regional Sales Director here at Workday, and Mark Green, Controller at Matrix Resources. And as a reminder, we are going to do questions a little bit differently for this portion. So again, you can continue to ask your questions about the demo in the chat, but for this, we're going to hold off all questions for Mark until the end. And what we will do is actually open it up so you can verbally ask your questions towards the end. So Michael, Mark, you're up.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Mark, thanks for sitting down next to me here, next to the virtual fire for our fireside chat today.
It's great to be with you.
Awesome. Well, to start things off, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about Matrix? What is your organization? What industry are you all in? And what's your role with the company?
Sure. Matrix is an IT services company. We're predominantly IT staffing. Been around since '83, so been doing this for a little while. I started the company in '99. So I've got my 21st anniversary coming up a little bit later this year. There's a high level.
That's awesome. Well, so on that topic, would you tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of your work background, your history, and your role over there at Matrix?
Sure. I'm a CPA. I've been the controller here. Like I said, I joined in '99. I've progressed up through the ranks, so to speak. Been the controller since, I believe, 2007. And definitely, this was one of our biggest projects was Workday. So we're pretty keen on having top-notch systems in place. So Workday fit the mold.
That's great to hear. So about your journey to Workday, I've gotten the pleasure of knowing you for a little while. You've been a customer. When did you all actually evaluate new systems and ultimately select Workday?
So I guess it was in 2014. We had a couple of challenges we were trying to solve. We were on an unsupported version of Ceridian for payroll. We were on an unsupported version of Great Plains for our financials. So we were going to have to move to a different platform with Ceridian, and we were going to have to spend a good bit of money to get to a supported version of Great Plains. So through our journey, we were really we started out looking to replace Ceridian. And we were looking at your traditional vendors that I'm sure everyone's aware of. we introduced Workday into the process, and that kind of opened our eyes as to what was possible if you join financial data with, traditional HR data. So, we started the demos, and we kind of put Workday through the ringer and make sure they could produce everything that they were saying they could. And lo and behold, we obviously selected Workday.
Awesome. So can you tell us about some of the goals that you guys were looking to solve when you did come to market for a new system, and maybe how Workday aligned to any of this?
Yeah, like I said, we were trying to solve our challenges with outdated or unsupported versions of Ceridian and Great Plains, which Workday was obviously kind of right in their wheelhouse. So those were our main two goals. Kind of some ancillary goals were, as I mentioned, we're an IT services firm. Our onboarding for our consultants, we were handling through emailing PDFs that then the consultants would have to, sign certain documents and then scan them back in, a real high-tech solution for an IT services company. So Workday was also able to solve our onboarding challenge because we are using onboarding in Workday, and it has been extremely helpful. Those are a couple of the goals.
Perfect. What did you all end up selecting inside of the Workday platform? What are you running today?
So we went live full platform. So we did HCM, payroll, financials, expenses, and onboarding's included, I guess, in the HCM. So that's what we went live with. Since we've been live, we added recruiting in for our internal positions as well as talent.
Awesome. And I think you guys kind of did it in record time from what I've been told. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I did a little trip down memory lane this morning. So we started our journey. It was the Monday after Super Bowl in 2015. And we wrapped up at the end of May, which gave us about a month to get the final tenant ready. So we went full platform in basically 4 months. And we were live, I think it was July 2nd of 2015.
Wow. So can you tell us a little bit more about your evaluation process, kind of who all was involved from Matrix, and who all did you look at? How long did it last, for everybody who may be in that spot right now?
Yeah, we had a decent sized team involved in the evaluations, and it kind of morphed as, especially as Workday got involved, because we were looking more, singularly focused on systems. So we had a decent size internal team. From a payroll perspective, we were looking at your ADPs, the Ceridians, Ultimate Software, Paycoms, and from a financial side, we were looking at NetSuite. There was another one. I can't remember offhand. But neither side of the equation was able to offer what Workday was able to do, tying all the data together. So, once we started down the path with Workday, we really kind of pulled back in those other areas because we really wanted the benefit of combining the two subsets of data.
Awesome. So Did you all work with Workday internally or a third party to create a business case for change for your organization as part of your process?
Yeah, our Workday sales rep really helped us out in that regard. He's the one who really kind of put the foundation together, and we were just filling in details. So that was incredibly helpful. And we did end up using that business case to present to our board. So yeah, extremely thankful that he was able to help us with that.
Excellent, glad to hear. I know you've touched on this a couple times throughout so far, but you are one of our customers running the full platform, and there is a lot of inherent value. You've mentioned data already, but are there some other things that you're experiencing as an organization having one system for finance and HR?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we just kind of expect it at this point. I mean, I can start with just our onboarding process because that's really where everything starts with us. So we have an integration with our front-end sales system that brings our consultants, clients, vendors, projects, everything related to a consultant in to Workday and sets that up systematically. And, you know, one of the big things that's helpful is, you know, those consultants we bring in, we know if they're W-2 employees or contingent workers, we know what project and therefore the customer they're working on. So we're able to present client-specific documents that a number of our clients require each consultant to have. So we're able to build that into the onboarding process. And once a consultant comes in for client A, they get client A's documents. So that's a big benefit for us. Some other things, I mean, our sales team is able to enter, you know, say an expense report, and all the work tags on each expense item default to the work tags set up on their employees, so they don't have to worry about any of that. But while they're in Workday, you know, we obviously have other areas, so, you know, they can view their customers' AR, they can enter PTOs, you know, they can get to all the critical information all in the same system. So, you know, we've been trying to simplify things and really reduce our vendor landscape, and Workday has definitely helped us do that.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like we had a lot of competition throughout the cycle with various vendors that you all were considering. You touched on being all in one system as one of the key reasons you selected Workday, but are there some others out there as well, whether culture or I don't know?
Yeah, I mean, a big selling point was the people. You know, we've been through enough demos and things with, you know, with other systems. Yeah, it's always hard to believe everything you hear in a sales demo. But Workday, I mean, they walk the talk for sure, and we kind of put them through the ringer. And we did quite a few reference calls, and, you know, everything that we heard kind of aligned with our culture as well. So it's just been a really good fit.
Excellent. What's some of the feedback from the leadership team after Workday has been in place for a little while and they're able to see some of the results from the system?
Well, I know our CFO really likes it. You know, I'm obviously a big fan. I mean, from a pure just accounting perspective, I mean, it's helped our team immensely. We've gone from, you know, being pretty paper-based to almost keeping, zero paper around, which obviously helps everyone. So it goes out from approving invoices. You know, we attach images of all the invoices. So whoever the approver is, you know, it's all handled in the system. I mean, we've been able to, without connected data, we'd have a tough time from some of the audit requirements of some of our clients. So we've been able to obviously pass their audits with flying colors. But just the ability to, I guess, just simplify everything, have it in one system where you can drill down to, you know, whatever those, you know, starting details are from financials, and really just, I mean, get insight into headcount. I mean, we've been able to do things with Workday that we haven't, you know, weren't able to do in the past. You know, our owners love going in and seeing our headcount dashboards. So there's some great things. We haven't fully expanded self-service in a really from a financial perspective to our leadership team. That's something we'd like to get to. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of gotten us to a different level from an accounting perspective for sure.
That's great to hear. We talk a lot about business transformation at Workday and how we believe our software can help businesses truly change from being very tactical and putting out a lot of fires in the finance department, allowing you to have more time to be strategic and analyze the numbers. Would you feel that's the case?
Yeah, we've been able to get out of, you know, some of those more mundane setup type tasks, you know, where we can focus on what's really value added to the business. And that's, you know, we haven't had to add headcount, you know, regardless of, you know, what direction the company has taken. You know, we've been able to keep headcount stable and, you know, really be able to focus on the things we need to focus on.
Awesome. Well, kind of transitioning, flashing back and thinking about your deployment of Workday. Can you tell us who actually deployed Workday? Was it Workday themselves or one of our certified deployment partners? And then talk a little bit more about how it all rolled out, if you could.
Yeah, we used a certified partner. They've since been acquired. But they were fantastic. They were definitely knowledgeable about the product. They steered us in the right way, regardless of what we thought was the right way. You know, they definitely try to keep us kind of in line with not overcomplicating things from the beginning, which, you know, we have a pretty good ability to do. So we were able to, you know, try to keep it as vanilla as possible. And we've definitely, you know, modified things since as we became more and more familiar with how things work. But they were able to really keep us on pace, keep us from going in tangents that, you know, we thought we needed because this is the way we had done it in the past. So this is how it needs to be going forward. So they were a great partner. And we actually still work with a number of those consultants still to this day.
Great to hear. So it sounded like from before you were saying that you went live with pretty much everything all at once in a short time period. Was there any phasing at all for any ancillary modules, or have you added any additional functionality after the original go live?
Yeah, we've added talent and recruiting. So
Excellent. And how did you all go back to your partner to deploy those when the time came?
Actually, no, we deployed them ourselves. We have a kind of a superwoman in our strategic technologies department that just loves Workday. So she went to training on both of those modules, and she actually implemented them herself.
That's great to hear. At Workday, we talk a lot about our system is constantly evolving, so it's more of a mindset of rolling adoption and constant learning, constantly getting better. And it's great to hear that our clients are able to embrace that and actually spearhead the entire effort all on their own. So kudos, that's excellent to hear. So can you speak about what other systems Workday was integrated into, and if that was during the original deployment or if you all did some of those after the fact?
Sure, I tried to come up with a list from what I could remember. So we have switched our payroll partners since, but it's still integrated. So we integrated for net pay and tax filing, and we've, as I mentioned, switched that out. We've integrated with our bank, so we're getting the daily BAI2 files in, as well as ACH files going out. We have added Adobe sign-in since we've been live. We're partnered with CIC Plus for tax forms. Our corporate credit card, we're having daily feeds come in, so all those credit card transactions are there for the users. All of our benefits vendors are integrated, so when we process payroll, all those withholdings are being transmitted electronically. We also have some files going into our data mart for some other reporting that we hook into our front end office. And probably the biggest integration is with our front end ATS system that really controls all of our setup consultant related.
It's great to hear.
I think that's it.
And your front end system, I believe for your industry is Bullhorn, correct? With your operational system there that you're connecting to?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a real staffing specific system.
Excellent. So part of the evolution of Workday and something that's different than legacy software is the pace of change. Workday has 2 new updates per year where we add hundreds of features into the product to continue to evolve and appreciate the platform. Can you talk about how Matrix has set up after go live to administer the system and continue to be able to take on these new features and functions and get more and more value out of the system?
Yeah, we're pretty lean on the support side, but luckily we have this superwoman that really keeps us on pace with everything. So with each new release, she's reviewing all the features that are coming out, and she's actually developed a SharePoint site to keep us organized. So she brings all those new features into SharePoint. She assigned them out to specific departments and users. And then she tracks them to make sure we're reviewing the videos. We indicate whether it's a feature we want to deploy. From a new release standpoint, she really keeps us on pace for all that. And we've obviously developed our own system for doing that works for us, and it's been working pretty well.
It's great to hear. And for those on the phone, all of the features in Workday in a new release come turned off. So you have the option of then opting in and turning them on after we roll out our new release at your own pace. So that was what Mark was referring to there, of figuring out which features they wanted to turn on. So changing from a legacy on-premise delivery model into a software as a service, with the keyword being service delivery model that Workday provides, can you talk about some of the benefits you've received as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ones is, we're forced to stay current right now. Everyone's on the same platform, so, we can't get behind. We may not adopt all the new features, but at least we're not falling behind and, having to worry about trying to figure out how we're going to upgrade at a later point. So we definitely needed that structure. I mean, Matrix isn't a huge company, so we're able to, really take advantage of ideas that bigger companies have, been challenged with. So we like being able to, see the new features come out and say, that's a good idea. We should take advantage of that. But, maybe that wasn't a huge pain point for us, but it can still help us, to some degree. Definitely looking forward to things like AI and machine learning and those capabilities that I know are rolling out, fairly soon.
Absolutely, like we are as well. One of the unique things in my career getting to come to Workday from other software companies where I've worked in the past is truly the Workday community. Every software company had some sort of community that I'd come from, but none have been like Workday, being all on one platform. It took me a while, even at Workday, to understand the power of that, but can you speak to some of the advantages that you've gotten out of the Workday community and being able to truly be one with your peers?
Yeah, that is a big benefit that I definitely left off. I mean, we use community regularly. That's, if we're having a challenge, with anything, that's normally the first place we look to see if, others have been challenged with the same thing. And we've been able to solve problems based on posts from other customers and really implement their ideas. So yes, it's a fantastic tool. Even if we're thinking about doing, something going down a specific direction, we go out to community and see if there's that other post out there, so we can, learn from other people's experience. So yeah, community is definitely a big benefit.
Excellent. It's truly amazed me in my time here at Workday how much our customers share and help one another, especially in the current environment. I think it's really impressive. So last question from me before we turn it over to the audience for all of their questions is really just, at Workday, we just want to know what's next for Matrix. Where are you guys going? And we hope that you're happy with the results so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're just continuing to try to embrace, new features that are coming out. We don't have any huge items on the list right now. We're kind of sidetracked. We're consolidating several time and billing systems right now into a single system. So that's taken up, the majority of our cycles. So that's our big thing in 2020. But we are continuing to try to embrace new features and functionalities in Workday. We'd love to get more self-service, especially from a financial standpoint, to our sales leaders. Get more dashboarding capabilities out there. This is fairly small, but we're a good ways down this process, and this is just the coronavirus impact kind of justifies this, but we're looking to integrate with the electronic income withholding order. Basically the state network for all withholding orders and garnishments. So they'll come directly into Workday and not have to rely on, those orders being mailed to us. So that's definitely something we're trying to get done now. We've been testing it, but it would have been beneficial to have it fully up now so we don't have to come into the office. So those are a couple things. Just our biggest one is kind of outside of Workday right now.
Well, Mark, from my perspective, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you again. You've been an amazing client, and can't thank you enough for coming and sharing your experiences with others who are where you were years ago, starting to look at Workday and considering different applications. So thank you again.
Absolutely. It's been a great journey.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael and Mark. Now we'll open it up to the audience. If you want to unmute yourself in order to ask the question verbally, if you just go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can hover over and you'll see where you can unmute yourself. If you don't feel comfortable with that, Bill is still monitoring the chat section and he can read questions out loud that come in from there.
Hi, this is Nancy Howell. Can you hear me?
We can.
Gotcha.
One of the questions I had on the approval, whether it be the business process or just the flow, many of our approvals do not follow a managerial hierarchy. Just because the person who submitted something, it's not their manager that needs to approve it. That goes for expense reports, for accounts payable, invoices, for journals. So do you have a way to, a different method to, for us to map how our approval process would be? And it's different for expense reports, separate from AP, separate from journals. They all have a different methodology as to how that approval process flows.
So Nancy, this is Bill. I can answer that, and the answer is yes, we do. So you mentioned expense reports as one. You might want to direct an expense report that was over $10,000 to the controller, or one that involved recruiting a new candidate to a recruiter, or one that involved time charged to a project manager. Those things can all be done outside of your typical supervisory hierarchy if those conditions arise. It's called conditional logic. We've all seen it in accounting. Those can easily be built into our business process framework to direct those routings and approvals. It's done in plain English, by the way. I think Dan showed you a good example of one. There's no code to write or anything like that. And the second part of your question, please refresh my memory, had to do with what exactly? I'm trying to remember the second part you asked.
Sorry, it was just because it's different for AP expenses versus vouchers versus expense vouchers versus journals. It's all, the approval workflow is different for all.
That was it. That was it. Yes, thank you. There's a separate business process for each of those transactions you just mentioned. So expense reporting has its own business process. Accounts payable, invoices have their own business process, et cetera. So they can all be set up to use different routing, different approvals, et cetera.
Yeah, and I can speak to what we've done as well. So most of our approvals are based on the organization chart, but our supplier invoices are not. So we did set up a process that's not driven by the organization flow. So that is definitely possible.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Sorry, it's Nancy again. So I saw when you were showing the AP invoice, once it was approved, you could go and click on the little three dots and you could see that it was posted. So again, they'll post immediately once it has been approved. But it didn't show the journal ID. So is there someplace else that you go to see what the journal ID is associated with that, or how do you find the journal ID associated with one?
Those three dots, which are called a related action, can surface something called Show Audit Trail. It has to show the audit trail. That audit trail will tell you everything about the journal that was posted on. Who did it, what day was it, where did it go, etc. I think that's what you're looking for.
Okay,
Yeah, and
so
the related actions.
I'm sorry. So
Sorry.
what I had in the chat before, so if it was approved and then reversed and reapproved, you would see all of those things in that audit trail.
Yes, you could. Our audit is on all the time, and it's not like logging in a database-based system. You don't turn it on and point it at different tables. It's always on. It records everything, and you can't turn it off.
Okay, so you can't turn it off, and you can just turn on people to have the security to see it or not.
All of our security can be pointed at everything we do. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mark? Bill, did we have any other come in the chat box for Mark?
Not to Mark specifically, no. The last question involved supporting integration with multiple banks, and do we support wires as well as ACH? And the answer is yes to both.
So this is Nancy again. If nobody, I'll just ask another question. Sorry. So one of the things that you showed was how you could drill down from an analytic kind of thing all the way down into HR, into people, or at least you could see. I think you said it was native. You weren't actually in the HR tool, but it was native to whatever. So if you've got somebody like a financial reporting manager, who obviously has access to all of financial reporting and all of the expenses and all of the cost centers, can they drill down and see personal and payroll information for all cost centers?
Only if you allow them that access.
So you would have to build a very specific security role that would let them go down to a certain point and then stop.
True. And again, it's role-based security. There's going to be a security group, security type that can see that type of information, and you decide who goes in the group.
Okay.
A question came in for Mark. Mark, how was your conversion of historical data?
It was a lot of fun. I forget how many years we brought in. So we went live July, so obviously mid-year. So I think we brought in 2 years of historical information that was really at just the summary level. And then for 2015, which is the year we went live, we brought in all the detailed information. And that's all done through essentially spreadsheets that are then uploaded into Workday. So, I mean, it really wasn't any different than any other historical conversion. All the work is going into tying things out.
Well, thank you. Another question came in from Mark. how do you cause payments to be sent? Are you using ACH or using physical checks? And if it's physical checks, how are the checks printed? From Workday, or you export them to a check printing software package?
So from a payables perspective, most of our transactions or payments we're trying to get them ACH. Just obviously the inherent challenges with checks. So once we complete a settlement run that has ACH payments in it, a file is generated that's sent to our bank. So we're not having to, log into our bank software and then someone hopefully uploading the correct file. That's all automated. As far as check printing goes, we do that in our office. So that's just on a standard printer with Micker cartridge, and we do that here. So not going through any other, payable system or anything like that, printing system. I do see a chat or a question in the chat, and for checks, a positive pay file is sent to our bank automatically through the business process as well. So both the ACH file and the positive pay file would go if there's checks.
Anything else for Mark? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, looks like we'll give you 7 minutes back in your day. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. And to the rest of you, and on behalf of the rest of the Workday crew, we want to say thank you for taking time out of your hectic schedule during this time full of unknowns right now to join us. We truly, truly appreciate it. If you have any further questions for Mark or for the Workday crew, please feel free to reach out to your Workday account executive, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, and above all else, stay safe and healthy. Bye, everybody.